Have you ever felt that pull to just give up? To trade that endless uphill struggle for a moment of comfort? Well, believe it or not, there's an entire philosophy for that. A worldview so slick, so coherent, and honestly so seductive that it makes surrender feel less like a failure and more like the smartest, most logical choice you could ever make. So let's dive into this dark but really fascinating system of thought. Okay, so at the very heart of this philosophy is a choice between two really powerful symbols. On one side, you've got the worn-out couch. Think of it. It represents security, warmth, ease, what this way of thinking calls the comforting lie. And on the other side, there's the indifferent mountain. This thing embodies struggle, risk, and a kind of terrible freedom that offers you absolutely no guarantees. It's the harsh, cold truth. I mean, every instinct for survival and comfort tells us that the couch is the logical destination, right? So why do some of us insist on climbing that cold, indifferent mountain? It's a question that has an observer, a slick, cynical figure who watches this age-old drama play out with this weary, knowing pity, absolutely convinced he has the definitive and pretty damning answer. And that observer? Well, he has a name, Mephistopheles. And he's not just sitting back and watching this drama unfold. He's a philosopher with a full-blown theory. He sees this whole struggle between the couch and the mountain as one grand experiment. And you better believe he's placed a wager on who will always, inevitably, win. Now, this is really important to understand about him. He's not your typical villain twirling a mustache. He sees himself as a scientist of the soul, a pure logician whose only purpose is to expose the truth. His entire project is this massive exercise in deconstruction, using a kind of brutal intellectual honesty to just strip away all of our grand illusions. And you know, like any really coherent philosophy, his is built on a single core belief, one unshakable axiom that informs every single other part of his argument. Everything he believes, everything he wagers on, it all stems from this one fundamental idea about what we are. And that core belief, the very foundation of his worldview, is what you could call an axiom of human frailty. It is a deeply, deeply cynical starting point for sure, but it's a powerful one. It argues that our weakness isn't some bug in the system, it's our defining feature. So here it is, right at the heart of his argument. For Mephistopheles, humanity is by its very nature frail. And this isn't some flaw that we're supposed to overcome. It's our essential definition. We are creatures of weakness and doubt, period. For him, this isn't just an opinion. It's a law of nature, as certain as gravity. So how does this frailty actually show up in our day-to-day lives? Well, first, he argues that we are psychologically wired to choose that comforting lie over a difficult truth every single time. Second, this is all driven by a deep, almost primal need for security and certainty. And third, these forces are so powerful that we will happily, willingly trade our freedom, that terrible, cold burden, for just the illusion of safety. Okay, but if we're all so fundamentally weak, how do we live with ourselves? I mean, how do you get people to not just accept their weakness, but to actually embrace it as a kind of wisdom? It's simple, really. You build an entire moral architecture that reframes weakness as a virtue. And this moral system, it has a name: slave morality. You can think of it as a philosophy designed by the weak for the weak. Its entire purpose is to provide the psychological cover, the justification, for finally giving up and sinking into that profound, logical peace of the couch. You see, slave morality isn't really about ethics in the way we usually think about it. It's all about psychology. It's described as a weapon, forged not from wisdom, but from the raw fear and resentment that those sitting on the couch feel toward those who are still struggling up the mountain. It's basically a coping mechanism that's cleverly disguised as a moral code. And this table illustrates its core function perfectly: inversion. It's a brilliant move. Slave morality takes the so-called virtues of the strong and just relabels them as sins. So pride, the engine that drives someone to overcome their limits, becomes a dangerous evil. Ambition, that desire to transcend, gets dismissed as a hollow pursuit. And the struggle itself? Oh, that's just foolish folly. It's a genius strategy to neutralize strength from the bottom up. Here's a perfect example of this in action. That noble quest for transcendence, for becoming something more than you are. Well, through the lens of this morality, it's just deconstructed and dismissed as this pathetic, hollow, power-hungry pursuit. It completely drains the nobility right out of the effort, making the whole thing seem kind of ridiculous. So, let's recap.
Mephistopheles has his axiom of frailty. He has his moral system to justify it. He's got a complete theory of the human and maybe not so human condition. But a theory is just a theory, right? It needs to be tested. It needs a definitive experiment to prove its universal truth. And this is what leads us to the climax of his entire philosophy, the cosmic wager. This isn't just some casual bet. This is the ultimate test, a clinical cosmic experiment designed to prove, once and for all, that his cynical worldview is the absolute truth of the universe.
Now, the structure of this experiment is just fascinating in its audacity. The subject, it's not just anyone. It's the strongest possible being you can imagine, the one who aspires to godhood. Let's call him the Overman, Wotan. The method is beautifully simple. Apply the two core forces of his philosophy, that corrosive power of doubt and the seductive gravity of comfort. And the hypothesis? To prove that even this paragon of strength is, at his very core, just a powerful slave to the same frailties as everyone else. And his prediction is incredibly specific and incredibly damning. He wagers that Wotan won't just fail, he will break. He will actively beg for the sweet oblivion of human comfort. I mean, that's the ultimate confirmation he needs, right? The moment the strongest will on earth renounces itself in favor of the weakest desire.
So at the end of the day, in this philosophy, there isn't really a choice. The struggle, the climb, the ambition, all of it is just a temporary and ultimately futile detour. The final destination is always the same. It is the inevitable, inescapable gravitational pull of the couch. And that leaves us with a pretty provocative final thought. This philosophy, as cynical as it does present a powerful argument about two competing forces in all of our lives. The couch is warm and it promises rest. The mountain is cold and it demands struggle. So the real question is, which gravity is pulling you?